Hello, everybody. Welcome to Leaf Talk. I'm Candid Frank Live. This is the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, Roku, and now on Leaf Talk. Joining me is for Freeland.
Hey, Frank, how you doing?
I don't know. I'm taking some medication. It's having an odd effect on me.
Understandable. New medication can do that.
Yeah, I think what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making a big announcement tomorrow, and I'm going to look like Superman.
Perfect.
I'm going to put a big F on my chest,
For Frank.
and I'm going to sell them for $199 because I'm worth $100 more.
Oh boy, that was quite something, wasn't it?
Oh, nothing says like I need help more than trying to sell pictures of yourself as Superman.
I tell you, I just when you think it can't get any weirder, this dude just goes and ups the ante completely. I gotta love it.
This is a double entendre. I think he has a problem with a mushroom.
It's entirely possible.
You have to follow that. You might not get that, folks, but I trust Aaron got it. So
I think so.
So there's okay. Let's talk about the Maple Leafs. Well, it's over. They won't be making the playoffs. They probably won't if they're lucky enough to make the playoffs. They probably won't win the first round. This team's hopeless. Terrible. And Marner didn't even get a point last night.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you got to look at the core and you really have to wonder if they're really gelling. I mean, they do have $35 million locked up in three different players right now. One of them's not performing. The other one is barely a point a game. And their captain. Don't even get me started on their $11 million captain, who's just, I mean, he's only producing at the highest rate in his career. He's just absolutely useless. But the only time he's getting points these days is on the power play. So, you got to strip it down if you really can. You got to get rid of this guy Riley on the back end. It's barely played all year.
Yeah, I think this team has shot its bolt. They're never going to win another game again this year.
Nah. If you believe most people online, it's never going to happen again. This season is over. Just pack it in, guys. We're done.
I didn't get to watch the whole game. I'll be honest about that. I was a little busy, couldn't watch it. I have it PVR'd. I could watch it after this, but it won't do any good about talking about it today. But what I do know and recognize is that they lost a game 2-1 and then allowed a goal in the empty net. So they were in it to win it, but they couldn't do it. And Marner and Matthews had great opportunities. And we forget, especially with Marner, that, not every opportunity is a real good one. With Marner lately, it's been, he's been magic. Well, the magic ran out. And as he said himself, he said, well, I knew it was going to end at some point. And I'm very proud of the famous names that I'm associated with because of this run.
You do have to remember as well that they were playing a team that was already on a 4-game winning streak that had the 2022 Vezina winner on it.
935 save percentage last year.
I mean, as it currently stands, as it turns out, the difference was the goalies. As simplistic as that, their goalie got one more stop than us. Now, the unfortunate thing is we really didn't do anything to help our cause along the way. There were stretches where the Maple Leafs absolutely dominated down low, but we just couldn't put it in. So it's at that point it's kind of on the forwards to finish, and it's kind of on somebody to make sure that it gets done. But you can't really blame blame the goaltenders on this one.
No, goals allowed. The third one was into an empty net. And you know who else you can't blame? The whole team. They lost a game. The world will not end just yet. It won't end. I love being hard on the Maple Leafs, but I try to be fair. And there's what kind of criticism can you make about this game? They lost 3-1. The defense, you can't. Who played well last night? Defense, check. Right. The offense didn't play that well, but defensively, the offense played pretty well. The forwards helped the defenseman.
Yep.
Goaltender was good, not great. Totally, that's factual. He wasn't great, but he was good, and he played good enough, well enough to win. Was the coach out coached? I don't know.
Not really.
I don't know about that one. Let's see now. I think this game. I think I finally. I've gone down the list, and now I realize whose fault this was. It was the trainer's fault.
Now I've come to the conclusion that it was Sheldon Keefe's fault 3 years ago for approaching Jimmy Vesey and saying, everybody here has a shtick. Engvall's the tall guy. Spezza's the old guy. What's your thing? You're just kind of vanilla. And in traditional fashion, the ex-Maple Leaf, Jimmy Vesey, got the game-winning goal and the empty netter to beat the Leafs. So it's, I blame Sheldon for this entirely.
You could say he VC rated the Maple Leafs.
Oh, horrible.
That was a stretch, I know, but I like it. It was a stretch.
Now, the other thing to note here is Michael Bunting is actually having himself a whale of a time. He's currently on a 9-game point streak. So, where Marner has now abjectly failed and justifiably should be trade bait.
Really, he's trade bait now. Just All right. Let's do some of the other stuff that we like to do here on the show, and we'll move on to some other stuff, and we'll go to the regularly scheduled programming. So you're welcome for the Christmas card.
No, I really appreciated that. It was a nice surprise.
But you're welcome. They arrived quickly. So we talked about the streak ending. What we didn't talk about is the worst thing that happened, even more than the loss, was the hand injury to Lindgren.
Yeah, he's currently being assessed. So as it stands, there is yet another Maple Leafs defenseman who has gone down to injury. He was supposed to be assessed earlier today in New York. I haven't seen anything about it. I don't know if you've heard anything, but just looking up for more information, he is going to be missing some time, but there's been remarkably little news other than the typical coached in hidden language upper body injury. We know it was the thumb. We saw it wrapped up when he was leaving the arena. It's just now a question of knowing how bad it is.
But do we really know it was the thumb, or was that to mislead?
You know what? Honestly, if the Leafs are at this point that they're falsely bandaging body parts to engage in a little skullduggery, that's just a little ridiculous. As it currently stands, however, the defensive pairings and showing on Daily Faceoff from the practice today were Giordano, Hall, Sandin, Liljegren, Brody, and Timmins. So he may have taken the ice. I don't know how much of a participant he actually was, but he hasn't added to the IR and he hasn't been ruled out. So
usually when you go to Timmins, you go north. But in this case, do you think after this game he goes south?
It's entirely possible.
Okay, let's go to our first intermission and we'll talk about the news, and we'll go to Alberta. What's happening in Alberta?
Well, as you know, there's the King's Court bench in Alberta. Alberta's Justice Minister Tyler Shandro says he's advising Alberta's prosecutors that the province does not consider it to be in the public interest to go after law-abiding orders of banned weapons. But provincial prosecutors are going to take over the handling of charges under the Federal Firearms Act starting in the new year. He says this change is being done using existing constitutional rules and does not involve Alberta's recently passed Sovereignty Act. So they're
Mm-hmm.
already trying to distance themselves partially from that.
Mm-hmm.
But Alberta's Crown prosecutors will now determine whether or not to pursue gun charges under the Firearms Act, not federal government lawyers.
The real question is, after they separate, will they be crown prosecutors, or will they change that?
Well, that depends. I mean, if they decide to go with sovereignty association, much in the same way that Quebec attempted to, they continue to use Canadian passports and Canadian currency, but I'm not necessarily sure if the same rules would apply.
If I remember, that was kind of a sticking point for the federal government, saying, "No, you don't get to use our money and leave us." What about the equalization payments? No, you
No,
don't
you don't
get
get those
those.
either. Nope.
You don't get those either. So, all right, let's go to Ontario's southwestern Ontario's largest hospital reassigned staff to pediatric division because there's a bit of a rush for children not feeling well.
Yeah. So if you're in the London area, London Health Sciences Centre is reassigning staff who have experience working with kids and is continuing to call on retirees to return to the pediatric critical care unit as it's struggling to treat young patients who are in need of care. There was an internal memo that was sent around on Wednesday night saying that it's seen an unprecedented increase in the number of children and youth being brought for care at Children's Hospital. And it says the current situation is no longer sustainable. Now, this update comes on the heels of Children's Hospital continuing to grapple with full occupancy levels. They are currently apparently running at about 135% of capacity, which is not a good sign.
In Michigan, a lengthy prison term handed to 3 who aided in the Governor Whitmer kidnap plot.
So, Joe Morrison, Peter Musico, and Paul Bellar didn't have a direct role in the conspiracy, but were members of a paramilitary group that trained with Adam Fox, who faces a possible life sentence in separate cases in federal court. The trio here were sentenced to, they formed an alliance basically to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. And this was before the FBI broke up their plot back in 2020. The trio was convicted of providing material support for a terrorist act, which carries a maximum term of 20 years, and 2 other crimes. Musico was sentenced to a minimum of 12 years, followed by Morrison at 10 and Bellar at 7. They will be eligible for parole only after serving those terms. So,
The question I have is, did any of them claim no, never mind. First Amendment rights. No, never mind. Freedom of speech. We did it, and it's freedom of speech because that's
well,
associated with everything that people do wrong.
apparently, one of their defense attorneys said, my client is clueless about any plot to kidnap the governor. So, that pretty much sums up the entire
You
situation
could have
right
put a
there.
period at the end of clueless.
I tell you,
You could have ended
this is
that
one of
sentence
those
at clueless.
who thinks it's a good idea to kidnap a legally elected governor of a state because you don't like the election results? Who does that?
The problem I have is that there is a characterization going on politically, and both the left and the right do it. I don't know if you heard Adam Kinzinger's little final speech as a congressional member. He took both. He took both parties to task. He didn't let the Democrats off the hook. He channeled his inner Republican,
Hmm.
but he was basically saying, "You're both morons. You both need to smarten up, and we need to put the country first." Well, hopefully that's what happens in every country. That should be the case. But the problem is here. We say that, right, with the assumption that it's the best idea. But if I were to look at Russia, would you say put the country first?
Well, if you're Russian, yeah, you would definitely say put the country first. But
But by
that's
that definition, you're not talking about following actually the country. You're talking about beyond the people in power, instead of.
yes.
See, that's the point. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So it's all about perspective, is what I'm trying to say. Germany. A huge Berlin aquarium bursts, unleashing flood and devastation. 2 people were brought to hospital due to glass shards. I saw that on TV. It looked massive. It was a cylindrical aquarium.
That's correct. Parts of the building that it was in, it's part of what's called the Aquadome tourist attraction, and it's in the heart of Berlin. It contains hotels, cafes, and a chocolate store. There was about 264,000 gallons of water, or about a million liters, that emptied out from the aquarium. And this was shortly before 6
Wow.
a.m. German time. So it'd be 5 o'clock Greenwich Mean, midnight hours. Um, the company that owns the Aquadome, Union Investment Real Estate, said that the reasons for the incident were still unclear. But despite all of the destruction, they were still very lucky. There would have been terrible human damage had the aquarium burst even an hour later, once more people were awakened in the hotel and in the surrounding areas. It was the biggest tank in the world at 82 feet tall. Um, it's speculation at
That's
this
like
point.
10 stories.
Yeah, pretty much. The
Eight
speculation is
stories.
that freezing temperatures that got down to -10 caused a crack in the acrylic glass tank, which
I
then exploded literally under the weight of the water. Unfortunately, almost all of the 1,500 fish that were inside the tank at the time passed away.
I hear that there's a restaurant nearby who's having a fish sale.
Well, fish and chips might be on the menu for a little while. That would appeal to the British tourists, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, I shouldn't laugh at that. Just it's just crazy. It's crazy that it doesn't look like it was, they were trying to imply. Well, we don't know what it is, but I think we're pretty secure that I don't think it was a terrorist act.
No, 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 no. I
And I
mean,
feel sorry for the fish. Don't get me wrong. Just unbelievable to have the humanity of all that. Wow,
it's that much
all over
water.
the street. It went across the street. Uh, there was debris all across the street. It was crazy. It didn't. It was surreal to me. It doesn't even seem real, which is probably why I'm having this silly attitude. It's unbelievable, really. Second period. Okay, let's talk about the Maple Leafs going into Washington.
So this looks to be an interesting one. The Leafs are 19-5-6 and second in the Atlantic. The Capitals are 15-12-4 and sixth in the Metropolitan. But these two teams always play each other extremely well. You have Ovechkin, who is closing in on Gordie Howe if he hasn't caught him already. I don't remember seeing anything about it last night that he had passed him.
What was it 800? He reached
Yeah,
600.
he's
600.
at 800.
Is it 800? Okay, so I was
Yeah.
right. Of course it
Um,
is. The great 800.
And Washington is 8-5-1 in home games. Capitals are 15-1-1 when scoring at least 3 goals. So one of the keys for the Maple Leafs is going to be making sure that they limit their offensive opportunities. The Leafs are 8-4-3 on the road and 19-5-6 overall. The Maple Leafs have a +30 scoring differential at this point in the season. They've scored 100 goals, but only given up 70. Now, this is going to be the 5th time that the Leafs are meeting this, that Leafs and Caps are meeting this season already. The Maple Leafs won 3-2 the last time that they played each other.
I wanted to mention also
Ovechkin,
that in winning,
yep.
in winning and breaking the record and getting his 800th goal, he did it with a hat trick. And the following game, they played flat. So they played really well, played flat. So they might have a little burr under their saddle for the Leafs.
Well, the idea I think behind that is going to be to make sure that they do, bounce back, which is not entirely unexpected. But yeah, with Ovechkin currently sitting at 800 goals, this next one would tie him, I believe, with Gordie Howe, and one more after that means that he would be in second place, only
Behind?
only needing another 93 to
Who's
catch
he
up to 100.
behind? Do I need to ask?
Yeah,
The
he's,
great
he's behind that Wayne
Gretzky.
fella.
It'll be the great 8 and the great Gretzky.
Now,
Good for
do you
him.
think it's possible he makes it?
To Gretzky?
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't seem to have slowed down much. He's up there chasing, the Rocket Richard Trophy.
This is true.
So, with that kind of pace, I think he's only like what? If he could get 40, 50 goals a year, I think he's only 3-4 years away.
Yeah, as it currently stands, he's
I'm
about
not looking at
95 goals
stats.
away from it. And I
There
mean,
you
he's
go.
under
That's even less. He could do it in 2
and,
years.
and he's under contract until 2025, 2026. So,
Well, dude's got a talent, setting up in his office. And what I find with players like him, Ricky Leach was the same thing. You know where they're going to go. You know where you're going to find him. Yet there he is, all by himself,
Yeah, I'm
stick in the
constantly
air,
amazed.
stick in the air, ready to go. The
I
goalie's
keep
on the other side of the net. She might as well just go to the wait. Why wait for the just cover that angle? Wait for it. It's coming.
Well, that's what always amazed me too, is the fact that he's not a small man, but he manages to just completely disappear. You know, like he's 6'3". How do you miss this dude on skates?
Yeah, he doesn't miss you. I'll tell you. He's got an edge to him. He is the complete player.
So heading into this game here, the Leafs are now 8-1-1. They're averaging 4 goals a game.
Mm-hmm.
Capitals are 6-3-1, averaging 3.4 goals a game. But the Capitals currently have Cole Hagelin, who's out with a hip injury. Martin Ferveri, who's out with an upper body injury. Connor Brown, who's out with a lower body injury. Darcy Kemper, one of their goalies, who's out with an upper body injury. Tom Wilson, who's still rehabbing his knee. Nick
Oh, he's
Backstrom,
not
who's out with a
playing.
hip injury. Nope. So there's some small hope there.
Oh.
Alex Alexeyev, who's out with an upper body injury, and Beck Maletson, who's out with a finger injury. The most recent additions to the Leafs injury woes are Victor Mete, a defenseman, who's out with a lower body injury. Nick Robertson, who's out with a shoulder injury. Kyle Clifford, who's out with a shoulder injury. Carl Dahlstrom, who's out with a shoulder injury. Then we've got Morgan Riley, Jake Muzzin, and Jordy Ben, who are all out. We all know about those guys.
And Liljegren, we mentioned earlier.
And Liljegren, who we mentioned earlier. So at this point, really, I think it saws off, to be perfectly honest. And it's great that we got TJ Brody back. It's great that Giordano's been taking up the lion's share of the minutes for us. My God, this guy is a workhorse. I'm amazed that we actually got him for the price that we did. But yeah, we got to do something about our injury situation, because man, it's getting to be, we're down to our 11th or 12th guy when it comes to our depth chart. I don't know who else there is to bring up, to be honest with you.
I don't think you can put together a depth chart for the Leafs.
It's pretty bad, man.
Be a little long. Yeah, well, it is what it is. Well, listen, I think this will be a bounce back game for the Leafs. I think they've proven this year that they handle the psychology of the game, if I can use that term. They don't let teams they shouldn't beat them. At least not in this new run. We'll see if that's the case here. They should beat Washington. They should. Aside from the injuries, they just need to play the kind of game they're capable of playing and get the kind of goaltending they normally get, which, by the way, I assume the Russian goalie is going to go in for the Leafs. And guess who the team they're playing is? He has a little experience on that team. And that he's chomping at the bit.
Oh, he definitely is. He definitely is. There is an additional side note that popped up yesterday afternoon. The Toronto Maple Leafs have placed Axel Rundell on unconditional waivers for the purposes of a contract termination. Now, Rundell was a 6th round pick for the Maple Leafs, 177th overall in the 2020 NHL entry draft. He played maybe 3 games, with the Marlies, and has spent most of his time out on the rock with the Newfoundland Growlers. The intention here, I believe, is to buy out his contract so that he can go back to Europe. He's from Finland. He represented his country at the World Juniors in 2020 and 2021, was named one of the top 3 players on the team in 2021. So I'm thinking the option here is for the Leafs to buy him out, send him back to Europe, and that gives them an extra spot where they can, if necessary, sign somebody else to another contract. So,
did he do something? Is there a history there?
No, it's just this is another one of those cases where a player is looking for an opportunity, and I think Dubas is looking to give him that.
And have a contract available to be
have a contract available. Yeah, to be perfectly honest, it's to get us below the salary cap. The contract cap, as far as I'm aware, because we're sitting at 50 out of 50. So once they buy him out, they'll be able to hopefully get the help that they need.
Well, it appears they need help defensively. All I can say is they're lucky that Timmins is working the way out the way he has. Let's go to the Canadian Football League. Start with the Bombers, Aaron.
So the Bombers have signed Kyrie Wilson to a 1-year extension. He was scheduled to become a free agent in February. He's returning to the Bombers in 2023 for his 6th season after originally signing with the club in 2017. His best season was 2019, where he started all 18 games and finished 3rd on the club in defensive plays. He's now played 35 games for the Bombers with 96 career tackles, 4 sacks, and 1 interception for a touchdown.
Let's go. There's more Bombers news. They
Yep.
signed a national.
So they signed national long snapper Mike Benson through 2024. He was also scheduled to become a free agent in February. This is his 3rd season with his team, and the 10th in the CFL. He served as the team's long snapper for all 18 regular season games in 2022, as well as the Western Final and the Grey Cup game.
The Elks signed Eli Mensier, or Menser, sorry.
So they've signed American defensive lineman Eli Menser and Canadian offensive lineman Elijah Watson. Menser spent 2021 and 2022 with the Argonauts. He appeared in 6 games in each season, 17 special teams tackles, and 1 interception. So, it's good to see him picking up with another team.
They signed also Mekhi Johnson.
Yeah. Johnson spent the 2022 season, excuse me, at Tusculum University, rushing for 635 yards on 100 attempts while adding 8 touchdowns in 11 games for the Tusculum Pioneers. He previously played at Marist.
The Red Blacks signed Dino Boyd.
Yeah, he's signed to an extension through 2024, so it's a 2-year contract extension for him. Boyd actually joined the Red Blacks in 2021 and appeared in 15 games during the 2022 season. So he played multiple positions on the O-line, so he's shown his versatility, and I think Ottawa's decided to reward him for that.
They also signed a national, Jackson.
Yeah, they signed Jackson Bennett to a 2-year. Again, he was scheduled to become a free agent in February. He arrived at the Red Blacks after spending the first 3 seasons of his CFL career with the Ticats. In 14 games, he rushed for 234 yards on 50 attempts, with 15 catches for 86 yards.
The Stamps welcome back Hunchuk.
So this is good for them. As it stands, they signed Colton to a contract extension. He's consistently made the team better since he joined the Stamps. He's a Calgary native and an alumnus of Notre Dame, so there's a little bit of home cooking going on there. Hunchak was a 2-time second-team Ontario University Athletics All-Star at York. In 2018, he finished 4th in the OUA with 58 receptions and 610 receiving yards.
I forgot to take my medication before the show. So thank you for giving me that. All right, let's go to the World Cup. France.
It appears that there's a little bit of blue flu going around. There's a virus that's hit France's national team ahead of the semifinals earlier this week, and it's now spread to at least 5 different players ahead of this Sunday's finals. We're looking at Adrien Rabiot, Dayot Upamecano. They missed the semifinal while recovering from the illness. Didier Deschamps said he was optimistic they'd be back on Sunday, but Raphael Varane and Ibrahim Konate have now reportedly come down with flu-like symptoms 2 days before the match against Argentina for the finals. Also, Kolo Muani has confirmed at a news conference, he's one of their forwards, said, yeah, there's a little flu that's going around. I think everyone has to be careful. The doctors have put in place a hygiene system to keep the virus from spreading.
Grant Wall, the reporter that died at the games.
There is further news from Grant's wife, Dr. Celine Grounder. She said an autopsy was performed by the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. Grant died from the rupture of a slowly growing undetected ascending aortic aneurysm with hemopericardium. The chest pressure that he experienced shortly before he died may have represented the initial symptoms. Unfortunately, no amount of CPR or shocks would have saved him. His death was not related to COVID or his vaccination status, and there was nothing nefarious about his death.
Let's go to the third period and talk about the Habs and Sens.
So this is a little treat for everybody. The Senators actually managed to hold off the Canadiens' late surge to earn a 3-2 victory. The missus and I were watching this game on Wednesday night, and let me tell you, it was a bit of a nail biter. We just the back and forth. We tuned in, and it was 1-0, and then it got tied up, and then we tuned back in again, and they were trailing. We're just like, we're not going to watch the game for a bit. We're just gonna let it go. But Shane Pinto, Drake Batherson, and Brady Tkachuk scored for Ottawa, while DeBrincat had 3 assists, and Cam Talbot had 23 saves for the win.
The Ducks won in Canada.
Finally,
in Montreal.
Again, this is the second half of a back-to-back for Montreal, but the Ducks finally earned their second regulation time win of the season in their 31st game against the Montreal Canadiens, 5-2. Like, I don't mean to kick a team when it's down, but oof.
But it's
the
Montreal.
Ducks are now 8-20-3 and ended a 3-game losing skid.
But it's Montreal.
Yeah.
It's Montreal.
Yeah, it's Montreal. I can't feel too bad.
Obviously not. The Jets. Connor scores in OT. I love this guy. Too bad he's an American. It'd be great to be on Team Canada, but he's a U.S. player.
It is what it is, but he did get a goal 3 minutes and 31 seconds into overtime to help the Jets beat the Preds 2-1. He actually had his first 10 shots of the game stopped, if you can believe it. Yeah, he was getting absolutely blanked. UC Saros was absolutely impressive with 39 saves. He got a bit of his glove on it, but unfortunately it did actually manage to go in. Dylan DeMello got the other goal for Winnipeg, who are now 19-9-1 and are currently 11-5 at their newly christened Canada Life Center in Winnipeg. So good for them.
Canucks and Flames.
This was another tight one. Kuzmenko and Martin were the ones who led the Canucks to a 4-3 shootout win over the Flames. Kuzmenko scored the lone goal, and Spencer Martin didn't allow one in the shootout. And that is 6 straight road wins for the Vancouver Canucks now, which is signs that they're on the up and up again and on the mend. So glad to see that. Martin actually had 35 saves between regulation and overtime, and his record is now 9-3-1.
Oilers lose to the Blues.
Yeah, Kyrou scored a shootout winner again as the Blues topped the Oilers 4-3. There's a lot of games that have been going to overtime lately. It's I'm not sure if it's indication of parity in the league or if there's something else that's going on here, but it was a bit of a crazy game. This was St. Louis's second win in a row. Kyrou also had the first goal for the Blues during regulation time, and set up both other markers that allowed them to get into overtime. So it was a big character win. Another big difference this game, Jordan Bennington didn't try to fight anybody, so that's something. I'm not sure if he actually took Craig Berube's advice to heart or not, but only time will tell.
We have us our final story in hockey, and then we have overtime. The Canucks, they lose to their ex-coach.
So,
and by Canucks, I mean Canadian team.
Here's what's really cool. Travis Green used to be a coach of the Vancouver Canucks. He was unceremoniously dismissed before they brought in Bruce. He's been tabbed to lead Canada's entry at the Spengler Cup tournament later this month. He's going to be behind the bench in Davos with Scott Niedermayer as one of his assistants. Shane Doan, a former Ottawa Sens and Phoenix Coyotes great, is going to be serving as the team's general manager, joined by Ray Whitney, Danny Briere, and Andrew Ebbett. So I don't know if most people know this, but the Spengler is a mixture of club teams and European-based Canadian players. It's back for the first time in 2 years. They hadn't played it because of tighter COVID-19 restrictions there. Europe doesn't quite place the same value on hockey as apparently North America does. But Canada is going to be opening up against Sparta Praha on December 26th. Canada will be looking to extend its win run. Canada's won 4 of the last 5 tournaments that have been held.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we can talk about the Maple Leafs again.
Sure.
All right. So, what do you think the odds are? Obviously, the team keeps playing like this. Is it going to be if they don't win a series, Dubas doesn't get signed, or do the Leafs have a second thought and fear of ending up with a GM that won't even get them to where they are now? Because that's what you got to think about, right? It's great that you can say, "Oh, let's give this guy up and let's go find somebody that can win us a series."
Well,
Temptation's strong.
it's if this were Leaf teams of old, um, despite his lack of success, I think Dubas already would have been re-upped. As it is, his contract expires at the end of this season. There are no signs anywhere on the horizon that he is going to be re-signed. Um, if the Leafs don't make it, if the Leafs don't make it to the second round, he may not necessarily get re-signed. I mean, it all depends on the showing. If they get swept in the first round, obviously it's not going to happen. But I mean, if the
Absolutely.
series ends up going to 7 games again, there is the very real possibility that he does stay on.
Let's talk about kind of like report cards. It's just before Christmas, and we'll talk about the Leafs. So we talked about Dubas. He, you know, for him for him to get signed again, they have to win a series. That won't necessarily be a great idea, but it is what it is, right? Well, I don't know. Like if they end up doing really well and they get out in the first round, and he's pushed out the door, what kind of changes could a new GM make? Do you know what I mean? Like where I guess that would be the importance of having a new GM with an idea how to win the cup. And who would be that guy? Who's out there that that could do? I know this is hard to hear, but who could do a better job than Dubas? Who's out there that could do a better job?
And I think that's a common complaint and a thing that a lot of people don't seem to realize, and it drives me nuts about the NHL. There only seem to be a certain amount of trusted hockey men that people would put into positions of power to run teams. There isn't enough knowledge of the general public about other GMs that are out there, whether it be for AHL, USHL, SPHL, ECHL, those sorts of teams. We're only fed a certain amount about all those individuals that are out there and capable of doing that sort of thing. So to sit here and try to speculate who they're going to get to replace Dubas is difficult, because
Absolutely.
we don't know who could potentially step in. I mean, you could be tabbed to be the general manager. I could be tabbed, but our ideas wouldn't necessarily be any better. And the problem is he has sort of painted himself into a corner with some of the contracts, but some of what's been left over for him by previous general managers has kind of handcuffed him as well.
Yeah, it's just for me as far as Dubas is concerned. Um, I guess he could change his name to Dubious because this whole situation is dubious. Um, it's not it's not a cut and dried situation, and I repeat, the success that he has had is limited, of course, by the fact that they haven't won a playoff series. But to go through a season of struggling and lose a playoff series isn't better, it's worse. And this is the concern I think that they have with the league being so competitive and as highly competitive as it is. Getting a new GM, I guess it's possible. Then you got to trust Shanahan. The Shanahan plan, has been played out, and now a lot of people have been pressuring him, especially this past off season. The Shanahan plan needs revisiting, and it's true. When the season ended, and my perspective personally was that, well, with this failure again, I just can't see the Leafs bouncing back and having another good year. Well, guess what? I'm not going to make a good predictor.
I mean, despite all of the trials and tribulations and the failures and the holes in the Leafs roster and the, questionable goaltending that they've picked up, as well as the lack of right-handed defensemen scoring punch on the left-hand side and players that aren't made out of glass, they're still sitting in fourth place overall. It's, you know, I Dubas has been a guy that's put together some of the best regular season teams I've seen in a
Ever,
long time.
ever,
Yeah.
ever. Aaron, the Maple Leafs in their heyday, when their great days, the Mahovlich, Johnny Bauer, Tim Horton, Alan Stanley, Sil Apps. Oh, just go on. Bill Barilko. They were never, I think the Leafs, when I was growing up, I think they had a team that finished first maybe twice in their history. The rest of the time, they'd sneak into the playoffs and kick ass. That's who they were. Sneak into the playoffs and kick ass. That's what they did. The Maple Leafs did that. They were a fourth place team that beat up the first place team. And they did it physically, they did it with goaltending, and they did it. And it made them great. So one has to look at things and put things in perspective. So for me, it's about the players that have not performed. Um, I think there's been enough trust by management put in these players that they should have won a first round series by now. I mean, let's
Yeah.
not make excuses. That they should have won a first round series by now with the faith that the organization had in the players that they have. Um, but then there's the thing that I talk about all the time. You can't carry a grudge, and you can't automatically assume because last year a player was X, they're not necessarily going to say X. I'll start in this way. We'll start with Nylander, who is having one great year. He's a guy who I criticized early in his career with the Maple Leafs because he seemed uninterested. He seemed not so responsible. Well, that's turned around. So when you trade Nylander now, you're trading the guy he is, not the guy who he was. So the point I'm trying to make is that with the GM, with a guy like Nylander, these are guys that have had growing pains. So for me, what I will say is that the Leafs' lack of playoff success is not on the coach, it's not on the GM, it's not on the players, it's on Shanahan. This is all wrapped around Shanahan, who had a great long term plan. I don't see this long term plan being bad. I see it as good. I mean, what organization doesn't want to be in the top handful of teams every year, especially in other places where that would mean the ability to sell tickets? The problem in Toronto is selling tickets isn't the problem. It's perception of greatness, and they lack it. And they lack it because they haven't established they're great.
No, I mean the Leafs have consistently finished with 100 points or more, and have been on pace for 100 points or more every year in the past 5 years. You know,
Absolutely. And
third in
the
the
Leaf
Atlantic,
fans
third in
have
the
been
Atlantic.
spoiled to a
Yeah.
degree, from a certain perspective, where every year they pay for their tickets, they go to the game, and the team wins more often than not. A lot more often than not. So, they're entertaining. This team is entertaining. Again, I take you back to the point where, unfortunately, in Toronto, entertainment is not enough. Here it's about, listen, we already know you're getting your money. Now we want to get some success. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here and take a leap from being successful, not just good. We've got a guy in. I'm looking at his stats here. He's 15 goals, 20 assists. Austin Matthews has 35 points. But what he has that I find very good, he's four behind Bunting. These guys are in the plus minus top 20, top 15, I think, even last time I looked.
Mhm.
How important is that, Aaron? And does that mean there's an understanding by Matthews that sacrificing some offense on behalf of defense, which, by the way, is sort of a playoff success kind of thing?
Well, I think everybody tends, well, there are folk that look on plus minus as one of those made up statistics.
I don't think
You
it is.
know, I, speaking personally, I'm a big fan of plus minus because it tells you, to a certain extent, as long
It's a
as your
story.
goalie doesn't poop himself, tells you, the story about how responsible you are defensively. And
He's on the ice against the best defenders. You know that.
yeah, and the fact that he's still plus 13 against the best defenders is definitely showing you something. Same goes with Timothy Liljegren. In 20 games so far this season, he's a plus 15. Mark Giordano's a plus 13. William Nylander is a plus 10. But I mean, you get into the guys that are in the minuses, and it's Calle Yarncroke, Zach Aston Reese, and Morgan Riley. Everybody else is either even or in the positives. And even then, Calle Yarncroke's only a -2. Zach Aston Reese is only a -1. And Morgan Riley is only a -1. And he hasn't played in, well, months.
Yeah,
But,
well, and he hasn't played at a time when the Leafs have been severely outscoring the opposition,
this is true.
right? Because that's part. Now, that's a two-edged sword. Is it because Morgan Riley isn't in the lineup?
Well, I mean, if it does turn out that that's the case and that the Leafs are really only doing as well as they are because he's not a brick on the back end, then they should definitely trade his $8 million contract.
You see, but that's again. I know you're being facetious,
Facetious.
and yeah, I know that. I've got a sense for when you're doing that. You do have you do have a look
I have a
or a
towel.
tell. Thank you. Um, I have one too. I'm talking. No, okay. So basically, we're looking at a team that to whom plus minus has become relevant, and I don't think it's an accident that Matthews is doing this. I don't think it's an accident that Bunting is doing this. Showing up in the top plus minus in the league. Now, absolutely, it doesn't say everything, but I think the plus minus, in my opinion, my humble opinion, supports what we're seeing from Matthews, his ability to take the puck away from teams, from players, his ability to chase defensively, his ability to pay more attention to his defensive game than his offensive game. So for me, the plus minus by itself doesn't mean anything. But when you put it in the context of everything else, one shouldn't be surprised that Matthews plus minus is better than it's ever been.
Not only is it better than it's ever been, but he's also second on the team in points, right behind Marner. So, there's that to
Absolutely.
consider as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that guy that couldn't score a point the last game.
Yeah, that pointless wonder.
Yeah, yeah. Then let's talk about John Tavares. He's played pretty well. There's been talk we've heard about him going to skating school. He's learned to reskate or skate to reschool, whatever it is that he did. He does look a little more fleet of foot. I don't think it's just talk. He does look a little, well, is faster the right word to use with him?
You know, I mean, for a dude that's 6'1" and 220 pounds, he is, if not faster, then at least smoother than he once was. I have actually noticed a perceptible difference in his stride. So,
And is there a player in the league that's stronger on the puck when he's not moving? When they're not moving,
maybe Mika Zibanejad.
right? In a closet, he's the guy you want going for the puck.
Yeah, I mean, this guy can do wonders in a phone booth with his stick. It's absolutely fantastic.
Which
So,
is why he should spend more time in the slot.
right in the bumper position there, right?
Right in the
2 feet
bumper.
in front of
That's
the
where
goalie.
he
Oh yeah.
belongs. That's
Oh yeah.
where his talent says, "Put me." Um, so we talked about Riley. He's hurt. The team is the plus minus is going through the roof because he's not in the lineup. We've established that. Alex Kerfoot. Whenever somebody says we got to make a trade, who's the first guy on the list to be traded, Aaron?
Besides Marner is definitely Alex
Forget
Kerfoot.
Martyr. Stop picking on him. It's Kerfoot and Hole. Depends what position you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, no, and he gets bad talked because of his salary. I mean, as it currently stands, his yearly value is $3.5 million, and people don't think he's worth it. The good news is, if you just wait until the end of this season, then he'll be done. You don't have to worry about it anymore. He'll be
Remember
able to
that?
go off on his own.
Remember that other M player that played for the Leafs, playing for LA? He just signed a $4 million contract.
Yep, saw that. So,
I like Kerfoot better than him.
well, I'll be honest with you. I've never really been that upset with how Alex Kerfoot plays. I've always thought that he's received a lot of negative attention.
He's the
Because
Swiss
of
Army knife.
Well, it's the fact that we gave up Kadri and got him, and the perception was that
Yes,
all
but
the pieces.
that was damaged goods going out, right? This is
Well,
where they traded Kadri, and everybody knew they were going to trade him.
yeah,
He'd worn out his welcome in Toronto by some, not me. I looked at what he did differently than other people.
but at the same time, bringing in Kerfoot was one of those add-in pieces from the Kadri trade, and the perception was, well, they only got rid of him because he was just about as useless to the Avs as Kadri was for the Leafs because he couldn't stay in playoff series. Kadri, that is, not necessarily Kerfoot. So there's always been this perception of Kerfoot being useless and of no real value. But the thing is, he is actually decent for the Leafs. That's
I think he's fine.
Yeah, nothing wrong with him.
Is Sandin really 5'11", or you think this is bull?
Sandin?
I don't think he's 5'11". It says here he's 5'11". He weighs 182 pounds. I get the 182 pounds. I don't get the 5'11".
Having seen him in person at Marley's games, he is about 2 to 3 inches taller than I am. So yeah.
So he's 5'8".
I'm 5'8", dude. Come on. Come on. That's below the belt.
Okay. No, it isn't. It's a lot higher than the belt.
Don't make me bite your knees.
That's your hair. Spike your hair. You can get a couple inches back. Yeah, no, I kid. He seems like a small guy, and I think it might be because of how smooth a skater he is. You don't expect that kind of skater in a big frame.
No,
And go ahead. No, you go ahead.
He's deceptively smooth, is what it comes down to. He has a way to find the little pockets and the little holes. It makes it deceptive, but he is a bigger guy.
And you know what, Aaron? It's time for us to go, buddy.
Oh goodness, are we out of time already?
Yeah, I have this
Holy
big old
smokes.
clock. I put this big old clock here. Put it here so I can see the time better. And I'm not looking. I'm just sitting, just da 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 da. All right. Well, Eduardo, take us away. This has been Leaf Talk. Watch us on Spanglish World.